Welcome to this edition of C-Band's Lunch and Learn. I'm Curtis Dean.
Todd Kilgop.
And we're two of the co-founders of the Community Broadband Action Network. Our third co-founder, John Ann Willow, is not with us today. She's tending to her bees in northern Michigan. It's a very beautiful time of the year up there. And she is a beekeeper. That's one of her many, many talents. And so I said, you go concentrate on your ladies in the hive, and we'll take care of our broadband C-Band Lunch and Learn today. Well, coming up on the menu for today's Lunch and Learn, we are going to be talking about the latest and greatest from the NTIA, the National Telecommunications Information Administration. This is the federal agency that is responsible for putting together the rules for the Bead program, which is the funds that were appropriated by the Congress and signed by the president. A total of $65 billion for broadband. $42.5 billion of that is going to be actually for broadband infrastructure investment. So the NTIA is writing those rules, and we're going to give you an update on where those stand and some of the developments that we expect to see coming out here in the near future. We're also going to talk about ways that people can expand their knowledge database, their knowledge base about broadband. If you're an advocate or a community member, that sort of thing, what are the ways that you can spin up and learn more about broadband so that you can have some information to bring back to your local community? We'll talk a little bit through that here in just a few minutes. And our interview segment this time around, we're going to be talking with Jeff Gavlinsky with Mountain Connect, which is one of the many great events that happen around the country that are all about communities and broadband and learning. So Jeff was kind enough to join us in his last few weeks of preparation for that event, and I will be talking with him about that and actually get a chance to go to Mountain Connect this year. So really excited about that. So Todd, let's start talking a little bit about the Bead program and the NTIA. The NTIA is in the process of finalizing its rules. And as I mentioned, the broadband bill that came out of Congress late last year, signed by the president, allocated $65 billion total for broadband, and 42.5 of that is going for broadband infrastructure. So right now, one of the things we're waiting on is the NTIA's rules for states on how to administer the funds that they receive locally. They are going to be expecting very soon, in the next week or so, to be issuing a notice of funding opportunities that states can apply for to receive their portion of the funding that they can then deploy back to the local providers, communities, et cetera, in their state to build those networks out. So we wanted to share a little bit about some of the resources that are out there. If you're a community advocate, a community member, that you should be paying very closely attention to this, because states will be applying for these funds. The funds will go from the NTIA into the state, whatever their broadband office is. The state then has to follow those rules from the NTIA in order to deploy that down at the local level. There's a really great article on online from the NTIA that is the URL you see here on the bottom of your screen, and that is how states can prepare for this infrastructure bill and how they can prepare for all the steps that they're going to have to go through to do this. So, Todd, I know you've looked at some of the things that are going to be included in the NTIA NOFO, or whatever they call it, that's coming out soon.
Yeah.
What are some of the highlights you see about some of the red flags, or some of the things that states are going to have to really be paying attention to?
Well, I think when they look at engaging with broadband availability and adoption data, that's something new to a federal program, and so they're going to expect the states to be able to capture data on the infrastructure availability, as well as adoption and use. And so they're going to be looking more about gap areas, or there must be something in the rules that wants to create some funding opportunities or preferences around that. Second thing I found interesting, funding for the Bead is proportional to the number of unserved locations in each state. And so if a state's getting a minimum of $100 million, that doesn't mean, there's going to be an interesting way that they're going to have to say about unserved locations. Are they going to go back and look at prior federal funding incentives? Or is it going to be wireline only? So we're going to have to some of that out. But I think it's important for advocates to understand that that's a criteria that the federal is putting on the state, and so the state may be a little bit hamstrung on that funding on down the line. They've got one on evaluating the state permitting. So they wanted to streamline any state and local permitting practices. That one you kind of always want to look at to see if a state is going to make a jump into local control. Yet it's for the good cause, right? It's for the good broadband cause. But how that gets balanced, and so there may be some advocates that want to look at that. And then finally, they want them to think creatively to develop multifaceted strategies for broadband providers to drive affordability holistically. And it's like, that's traditionally not inside, let's say, a state OCIO office who really just wants to manage the data flow and grant flow. But that's almost a dichotomy in skill sets about trying to get out there and engage with others on affordability. So those are all the things I think the advocates of C-band or within C-band want to see if there's ways that they at the local level are going to want to participate in with the state.
Now, of course, the states are going to be going through this process through the Ntia where they're applying for these funds. The states are then going to have to develop their own state program to deploy those funds, following these guidelines that have been given here. So we're still several weeks, if not months, away from any of this funding actually being deployed in the forms of grant rounds. But this is the first step, one of the very important steps. Another very important step that's still coming is finalizing of the mapping down to the geolocation area. And that data collection is starting very soon. Providers are going to be having to start providing location data of every location that can be served with their services and what services they can serve at that location. That information gathering will begin here early this summer, and it is expected by late this year that the new broadband maps will be out, and that's what will, of course, define what areas are unserved, underserved. So, which of course all goes back into the state, and the state has to say, okay, we can deploy funds in these areas, but we can't in these areas because they don't meet the definition. So we're still going to have to deal with these maps, although they should be much better defined than some of the broadband maps that we've seen in the past.
And part of that is too, though, that there is going to be a challenge process within it, which I know Iowa, has done with its state money in the past. So hopefully that gets to be a standard practice. But then, there's your challenge. And then number two is they're still saying, am I correct, Curtis, that they're still saying providing that you can provide to the address in a reasonable amount of time?
Correct.
And so you're going to have to challenge not only the capacity, but also whether it's there or not.
Yeah. Again, the thing they're trying to avoid here or try to improve upon is maps that just say if an address is served in a census area, then the entire census area is considered served, which of course has been problematic in the past. I really thought this was interesting. There's a great article in the GovTech magazine, April 2022, that said basically each state has to develop a process for local governments or other stakeholders to challenge whether a particular location is deemed underserved or unserved or underserved. So that could get down to the map challenge, right? One of the things that, Todd, you and I have found in talking with communities is that they'll say, well, yeah, the provider is advertising a certain speed level there, and that basically means that our community is served. But when we actually run speed tests, they're actually not meeting those criteria. So that will hopefully give local communities, localities, counties, et cetera, the opportunity to use any data they've collected, whether it be speed test data or customer accounts, to challenge that, say, okay, yeah, they're advertising it here, but they're just not meeting the criteria of what our customers consider to be good enough. So there's that article, that GovTech article. If you want to jot down that URL, if you're watching this, you can always pause the video and write that down if you'd like to. And so we'll know here soon. It sounds like within the next week, the NTIA will drop the notice of funding opportunity, And I believe that there will be some, follow up with that. So you'll probably hear about it in our next edition of Broadband Bites. I'm sorry, on not Broadband Bites. It'll be in there too, but it'll be here on our Lunch and Learn. Moving on, we want to talk a little bit about some ways that community advocates can build their knowledge base on broadband, because you're starting if you're an advocate trying to figure out a way to get better broadband in your community. Maybe you're a decision maker, a council member, maybe you're just a person, right, who's tired of bad internet, and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get this thing going? Well, one of the things to do that is you join C-Band. So thank you very much. And as part of C-Band, we will help guide you through where some of that information is and make some of those connections. But, there's a number of ways that people can build that knowledge base. Todd, one of the things I've found most valuable over the years is just the personal networking that comes with talking to people. I got my start early on at a municipal broadband utility 25 years ago, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we learned most was just calling other municipal broadband utilities and saying, hey, how did you do this? What was this challenge? Did this go well? What went badly? What should we avoid? That sort of thing. So those are the sorts of connections too that we try to facilitate through C-Band. And, people that can tell you and say, been there, done that, are really valuable to network with. You see some of those connections too when we're able to get together in person at our various C-Band events that we've done over the years. A lot of good table talks with people just sitting around the table talking about things going on. Yeah. There are a number of online resources that are very valuable. Now, we're, of course, at C-Band, we're also bringing resources, but we cannot and will not pretend that we know and do everything. So we are constantly looking out at other resources that are out there that people can call upon to learn. One of the best, certainly one of the best, and a huge supporter of C-Band has been muninetworks.org. This is the broadband project of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Christopher Mitchell's been a guest here on Lunch and Learn a lot, and they just produce a lot of great content, a lot of good case studies. So I would encourage everybody to check out muninetworks.org. Not only do they do great stories on community broadband efforts around the nation, but they've got a podcast and they've got a video blog, and they do some stuff, and it's really good. So I would also encourage people to check out Fiber Broadband Association. This used to be called the Fiber to the Home Council. They changed it a few years ago, but the Fiber Broadband Association is basically dedicated to bringing fiber optics to everybody in America. So they have a pretty narrow focus, right? They don't get into talking about fixed wireless or, other types of technology. They're really all about fiber. And, Todd, I think you and I agree that fiber may be the best solution, but it's not necessarily always the only solution. It may not be a feasible solution in some cases. But Fiber Broadband Association has some great resources for communities. Another group and an online resource I wanted to point out that I've had great experience with is NTCA. NTCA is the Rural Broadband Association, and this is a group that is a nationwide group that organizes events and collaboration between primarily rural independent telephone and telecommunications companies across the nation. I've been to several of their events. They're excellent. They have, a lot of good information, but their website is also good. And it's also an organization that people may consider joining because their mission may very well move closely in parallel with what you're trying to do at a local level. So ntca.org is their website. One other one I want to bring up is Broadband Communities. Now, Broadband Communities is technically a magazine, or at least it started out as just a magazine with lots of ads in it. I've got a whole stack of them over here. They've branched out over the years, and they've got a lot of resources on their website, bbcmag.com. They also do an excellent summit every year that is extremely well attended, and there are representatives there from across the nation, vendors, community members, providers. Now, one of the things about Broadband Communities is that they do not specify rural, they do not specify small providers. So you'll see Verizon at their events, or you'll see Comcast at their events. And you may think, well, maybe that's not quite for me. But you can learn from these people. And these are larger companies are often looking to partner with smaller companies and with localities to bring solutions. So, those are just a few of the organizations that are out there. Todd, you and I've been to probably way too many conferences over the years. Can you think of any particular conference you've been to that you got good value out of? Because there are a lot of events out there. You could spend your entire livelihood and life just going to broadband events across the nation.
Mine is always just find those that are trying to do what you're trying to accomplish, whatever stage you're at, whether you're just exploring or whether you're part of the planning phase or things like that. You get into planning, I think your state levels have been really helpful to be able to find those that are about your size or about your group or about your structure legally. So take a look at the state associations.
Events where there's a lot of common ground between what you're trying to do and what those folks are trying to do are excellent. Absolutely. That's why I wouldn't recommend, if you're just a community advocate in a small rural community, I don't think you get a lot out of some of the big national shows, but you certainly would with a regional show or a state show, or some of those smaller type of events that are out there. And these events can get pretty expensive, right? Some of these national events tend to be in resort areas, Disney or Nashville or Vegas. They can run up, you can spend quite a bit of money going to those. One of the things that I always encourage people, C-band members, if you have a question about, hey, I'm thinking about going to this, what do you think? Get a hold of one of us. Just email us, because chances are we've been to one or more of these events, and we can kind of give you some guidance about, okay, if you go, here's what you look for, here's what you might want to skip that one. Go to this one first, and then go to the big shows. I think they're very important. It really is drinking from a fire hose at a lot of these. And even though I've been, Todd and I, we've both been in the business for telecom for 20 plus years. I go in there, and by the end of a 2 or 3 day event, my sponge of my brain is completely saturated, and so you can only get so much out of these events. You have to have time to digest it too.
And that's what we really hope C-band can be, is after you've done, got your thirst quenched from the fire hose, is decompressing it back into what do I do next? Because you gotta know how to put the right foot ahead of the left foot next to keep walking. And sometimes people get to those shows and they just walk away and they don't go back to the topic of broadband. That's what we're trying to avoid.
And, one last thing I would say, and this kind of goes back to the networking piece of this, people that go to these shows, they may think, oh yeah, lots of educational workshops, and that's where I'm going to learn everything. I think you learn most of what you learn just by the conversations you have with people. Yeah. And a lot of times those conversations are spurred from a session or something a speaker does or a presenter says or does. And then you take it out into the hallway or into the vendor show floor, and that's where that conversation really gets fleshed out and turns from just information being spewed to you into something you can internalize and do something with. So
I guess I would go back to Fort Morgan, Colorado, because I remember you and I were out at the Mountain West show several years ago when Fort Morgan was kicking the tires, and it's like, hey, we'll just swing by Fort Morgan on the way back and take a look at this community. And then we were able, as they meandered through, we had a little bit of a flavor about how to advise them a little bit about how they wanted to do their RFI process.
That's right. And, here at C-band, we're hoping to do more events as time goes on, as we continue to grow the organization, 115 or 16 strong now, members across the nation. So, but we certainly don't want to replicate great content that's out there, but we would like to let you know that it's available, and we can even provide you some guidance about what's going to be in your wheelhouse and maybe stuff that maybe is better for later on. So don't be afraid to reach out again if you have any questions about that. You can just email us at this address, hello@broadbandaction.com. We'll be glad to help you out. Well, one of the events I can tell you that is valuable, because it really is in the wheelhouse of a lot of broadband advocates, community members that are just starting the process, is Mountain Connect, which is a conference that is coming up here in May of 2020, and it's usually held every May. They had to juggle around a little bit because of COVID, but now back onto the regular track, held at Keystone Resort in Colorado. I'll be heading out there in a couple of weeks. Todd and I have both been to this event a couple of times. And one thing I really like about Mountain Connect is that you really are with people that are in similar straits, so to speak. There are a lot of people from the mountain area, obviously, but that show is continuing to grow, and more of these folks from the plains like myself are going to this event, and it's a great show. So we spent a few minutes talking with the person who's been putting this together since day one, Jeff Gavlinsky. He talked to us about this year's Mountain Connect show and why people should go. So enjoy. So one of the events that I personally love to attend, I think there's a lot of information to be gathered at, is Mountain Connect. And this is an annual event that it takes place in Keystone, Colorado, at the Keystone Resort there. And the guy who puts it all together is on with us today here on our talk of, let me start that over. What a dumbass. Okay. All right, we'll do this way instead. And then I'll go to the two-shot. Okay. Thank God for editing. If this were live, I'd be so embarrassed right now. One of the events I love to attend every year is in Keystone, Colorado, a beautiful mountain town where you can learn lots about broadband at the annual Mountain Connect conference. And it is coming up later this month. And so we wanted to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about Mountain Connect with the man who put it all together and makes it happen every year, Jeff Gavlinsky. And Jeff, thanks for coming on with our program today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you about Mountain Connect.
You bet. Well, it's a great event, and I've been to the past. Well, I've been to the past 3, I believe, in a row, and then one pre-COVID. But let's talk a little bit about Mountain Connect and how did this event get started? What's the genesis of Mountain Connect?
Well, it was actually started after we were awarded our BTOP grant in 2009. And the gentleman who started that, if you compare it to what I'm doing today, they had a much sort of narrower focus, right? Because our BTOP grant was supposed to connect all of our all of our school districts in Colorado.
Right.
So the focus of that conference, or at the time, which was about a day and a half long, was the impact of that BTOP grant to the western slope of Colorado, because at the time, one could argue that was probably where we were having the majority of connectivity issues. You know, not to diminish what was going on in the eastern part of the state, but certainly the mountains provide a beautiful place to live, but a lot of barriers to building broadband infrastructure.
Sure.
And so, because it was focused on the western slope, I think, and I participated in it because I put formal structure around Colorado's first local technology planning team.
Okay.
Down in the southwest part of Colorado. And so I think after the second year I was there, his name is Corey. I said, Corey, I think there's so much more we could do with this event, just in terms of expanding it, making it an event for the entire state, not just for the western slope. And so he, long story short, he said, well, if you want to do that, you take it over. So you got to be careful what you ask for.
But it sounds so great, then you do it.
Yeah, exactly. So that last year there were 90 some people there, and I think this year we're expecting 700 and some. So over the course of 8 years, I've taken it, and I had a partner at the time, so her and I expanded it to a statewide event, and then the year after that, we opened it up to the western portion of the country, and then eventually the U.S. So you'll find this year that we've got folks from all over the country who are participating in the conference.
Yeah, it really has. The name is still Mountain Connect, but it's really more about connecting with people from all over. You just happen to be in an awesome mountain setting.
Yeah, well, that's done on purpose. Keystone is kind of unique because it's at 9,300 feet above sea level, and so the backdrop isn't harmful on the eyes, as you can see the pictures shown by there. But I think the other thing that makes it a bit unique if you compare it to other conferences, broadband conferences, is that I'm focusing most of my attention on the tier 3 and below
Yes.
communities, counties, telcos, WISPs, utilities, education, healthcare, etc. So I've also grown it into a very broadly focused agenda. So, if we're still talking about why broadband is important, I think we got bigger issues. But so the other thing is, I like to think that I've always been technology agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always created a platform for wireless technologies, because until we can build fiber everywhere, we're going to have to be inclusive of other technologies providing broadband, because if we're not, we're doing a disservice, I think, to communities who are trying to build a network and may not have access to funding to build fiber. It is the best solution
Right.
long term, but just because they can't get access to fiber doesn't mean that they can't get access to other technologies. So
That
and
old
then
saying, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the very good. In this case, it
that's correct.
applies.
Yep. Right.
Using the
So
best technology you can afford.
right. So I might have folks come in from bigger cities and talk about successful projects and lessons they've learned, as a template for others. But I'm trying to really help those that need help.
Yeah. Well, that's what I really appreciate about your event, is that it is really focused on public entities and smaller providers, smaller communities, versus, some of the big shows that are out there, like the Broadband Communities show, which is a great show, but you're going to be knocking heads with AT&T as much as you are with little guys. And so maybe that it tends to, I think, thin it out a little bit. And, what I always think about with your show too is it's not small by any means. 700 people is nothing to sneeze at, but it feels a lot more intimate. And I think you've done a lot of work to make that happen.
Yeah, and I hope that never disappears, because I got even last year, someone came up to me from Google and said that they really enjoy coming to the event because it is an intimate set. The way we've got everything laid out. I don't have a trade show floor, for example, so
Mm-hmm.
most of my exhibitors are in the high foot traffic areas, so it allows for constant networking. And if we're being honest, the reason why people want to go to these shows like Mountain Connect, they want to be educated, but they also want to have the ability to network with
Yes.
peers, with our industry, with political leaders, should they be there, etc. So that's the type of environment I would like to continue to create.
Well, that's what we're really focusing here on this show, is how do you learn? And you learn by both doing and talking with others who have done, and that networking that happens in an event like this. I know when I go to an event like Mountain Connect and I sit through a session and engage in that session, I learn as much from sidebar conversations that happen outside of that session as I do to the material that's going on inside, and they really complement each other. You'll hear something in a session that catches your attention and makes you think about something, and then you'll talk to someone in the hallway afterwards during vendor time that you just can expand on that, and it's really valuable to have that kind of interaction with people.
Yeah, and the last point I'll make is the other thing I started doing about 4 years ago is when we have industry presenters, I would say probably 80+% of my agenda are not standalone. They contain very little standalone presentations.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big believer in having panel discussions,
Yes.
interactive discussions without a 60-slide deck that you're rifling through. And I think it's important because, again, if you consider the audience, if you're a vendor and serving this industry, it's one thing for you to stand up there and say, well, because we're experts, if you do A, B, and C, you'll be successful. It's quite another if you say that and then say, well, here is a peer of yours who's going to stand up and tell you how they executed around A, B, and C, perhaps the lessons they learned along the way.
Absolutely.
That message resonates more with the folks in the audience.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I've had the honor of being able to participate in a couple of the panel discussions at past events, and even when you're on the panel discussion, you learn a lot because you're around people that are probably smarter than you, and I try
Yep.
to put myself around people smarter than me as much as possible, although that maybe is kind of a low bar to clear in my case. But um, let's talk a little bit about the agenda because we really like people that are watching this, assuming that folks are seeing this before the deadlines and everything. We want you to go out to Keystone, Colorado, May 23rd and through the 25th. And so let's kind of go through your agenda here, which I have up on the screen as well, Jeff. And things get started off with golf. Golfing in the mountains makes you feel like Superman, right?
Well, it does. It does in Keystone because I think the golf course is at 9,400 feet, and this year we're playing the ranch course. Well, I won't be playing, but everyone else will be playing the ranch course, and that is a spectacular golf course with 13, 14,000 foot peaks behind it. And that's been a tradition for the last 6 or so years. And then parallel to that, or just starting a couple hours after we kick off the golf, is another mainstay at Mountain Connect, which is our Broadband 101 class. That is really geared towards elected officials and anyone who's interested in coming to the class. So we'll get a pretty good blend of folks in there. But, really it's there to sort of give people the basics. As you know, politics is often a revolving door. So we're always in this mode of re-educating people.
Absolutely.
So that's what this class is geared towards. And then that particular class includes lunch as well. So I think the cost of it's $100. So
And
it's
that can be a standalone thing, or you can add it to full conference
that's correct.
registration.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's amazing, that you mentioned that course is going to evolve. It's going to evolve as situations change. If you look at Mountain Connect 3 or 4 years ago, we had no idea we were going to be sitting on all this broadband money that's going to be flowing out the door, already has flown out the door. So this is certainly something you have to adapt every year.
Yep. And then in the afternoon, shortly after that class ends, we have our annual Colorado Broadband Stakeholder meeting. Historically, that has been started out with our governor's office of information technology coming in to give a sort of a state of the state of broadband for Colorado, geared towards our local technology planning teams from around the state. But over time, this conversation has grown quite a bit. So there's always a lot of people in this particular session. This year, it'll be interesting for a lot of reasons. One, we've got the NTIA NOFO announcement that's coming the week before, should that still happen.
Right.
But more specifically, I think it's going to be a view on what you can expect from the state, as much as they can say. It'll be an update on our broadband development fund as well. We are one of the first states to take telephony money, our high cost telephony money, move it over to broadband.
Oh, excellent.
So that'll be discussed, and there's other topics like public safety. What are we doing on public safety with FirstNet, for example? Sure. And then, of course, we end the day with the conference welcome reception. Now,
and that's always a great event because you get to network with people and maybe step out on the patio and look at the mountains.
Well, and it's right on the lakeside as well. So
that's right. That's right. It is around where you will see the largest rainbow trout you've ever seen in your life, but you can't catch them. So don't try.
I will tell people to scroll down just a tad. So we have Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Bennett, who are going to Zoom in from Washington, D.C. because they're both in session, so they can't make it out in person. But they've dedicated 30 minutes to our audience.
Fantastic.
So they'll be answering questions from the audience and whatnot. And then we'll have a formal state of the broadband in the state of Colorado. And then we've got another session that's not on here yet. It's from our presenting sponsor, our conference host. And then this session starts at 8:40. I did want to highlight this one because there is a special announcement coming Wednesday. There is someone very important coming in.
Excellent.
And and I think it's going to catch. It'll be a surprise to a lot of people. So that'll be announced on Wednesday. So stay tuned.
And it's
for
not
that.
Drew Clark. He's
It's
special
not Drew
too,
Clark.
but
In
it's
his own
somebody
way.
bigger than Drew.
It's somebody way bigger than Drew Clark.
Okay.
So, and then if you start going down through the agenda, one thing you'll notice is that I have historically sort of punched above my weight a little bit with having 5 tracks. So one of the complaints I get is I have too much good content at the same time. Now I consider that a compliment rather than a complaint. Now you'll notice in this first batch here, we are hitting on what's relevant. Of course, we're looking forward as well, and we happen to have our lieutenant governor speaking in a session.
Oh, excellent!
So she's
You
going to be talking about.
Scored major elected officials here. That's awesome.
Well, wait do you see the announcement that's coming? Anyways.
Oh boy.
So, so we have a very diverse agenda here.
Fantastic.
So if you want to scroll down, I want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, we won't dwell on this. This is all on the website. So this is not magic here, folks. We're just scrolling through that. I know it's a lot of work, obviously, and there is a lot of content there. But then again, there is a lot of content here. That's why I always say when people if you're going to a conference, let's say you're a community broadband advocate and you want to go and learn, try to take extra people with you. Try to have 2 or 3 people so you can tag team and hit more than one of these sessions or more than one of these tracks. If not, you're going to be leaving a lot of content behind.
Right. So if you go down to the first lunch keynote, this is important because last year I highlighted 9 areas that I was going to Mountain Connect would focus on for the next foreseeable future, probably 3 to 5 years. And one of them was community network resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
As we have more climate, one way or the other, is shifting a bit. And as a result, we're having more natural disasters with fires, floods, hurricanes, etc. And so last year we had a session on what is it? How do we build resiliency and redundancy in local networks? And this particular subject, I don't know if you recall this, but right after Christmas, we had a bizarre fire.
Yes, you did.
That burned 1,000 homes in a matter of a very little time, and it also took down the 911 system. It took down the local cable company, which was Comcast, and because they didn't have any resiliency built into the local network, those services were out. So we're going to hammer home that point here in this keynote. So I think this is a really important one. And we've got folks from Louisiana, Colorado, and I think Utah, or not Utah, but Idaho on this as well. So it's a pretty good blend.
Yeah, there's not very many areas of the country that haven't been touched yet by one of these high impact natural disasters, whether it be, derechos in Iowa, hurricanes on the coast, fires in the West. It's happening everywhere.
Right. And then if you go down to 2 o'clock, there's one there I wanted to highlight.
Sure.
They're all great, but I just wanted to highlight how Detroit is using open access to solve the digital divide. That will be a very interesting conversation because they are doing something. They have crafted a strategy that I have not seen by not only a community, but a very large community in terms of connecting the economically disadvantaged people first. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a really interesting session. So,
and a good friend of C-Band, Chris Mitchell, doing the moderation of that.
Yes, indeed.
Chris gets his way down to Iowa once in a while. Anyway,
one of the other things I forgot to point out is we actually have a dedicated Bead track for those interested in Bead.
Okay,
we probably would have picked up on that by now, but
right here,
that first session, first track is a Bead track. So all things Bead are contained within that.
So if someone wanted to, focus completely on that, they could just stay in that track, and maybe if they have a coworker or someone else that they brought with them, let them go to some of the other tracks.
Yeah, that's correct.
Great, that's fantastic. I wish I could clone myself so I could go to more.
Right. And so as you know, as we wind down the day, we have an exhibitor reception, um, and then when we go into day two,
Hmm.
um, we have our state attorney general talking about the law of digital rights, which I think is another timely topic.
Definitely.
So Phil Weiser has always been a supporter of Mountain Connect, and since he's been elected, he was elected attorney general a couple of years ago. He even though he is the attorney general, he still finds the event important. So he's coming as well. So looking forward to that session.
Fantastic.
And if you're a municipality wondering what to do about privacy and digital rights, that would be a great session to attend.
Yeah, that is a topic that comes up quite a bit, especially when a community is, say, looking at maybe investing in a network, is the concerns that some citizens have about, um, they may be more concerned for some reason about the government knowing what is going through their computer connection than they would a private company. But it does have a different twist to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to become an even bigger issue in the coming years. I don't think enough people are paying attention to it.
Yeah.
So again, that session is going to be really, really important. And to back that up, we have Jessica Deer along with Phil, and she's from Ranking Digital Rights. So, it's a pretty good discussion.
Great.
And then this year I'm doing something a little bit different again. I'm ending things with as you keep scrolling down. Look at the last 4 sessions. Those are our last 5 sessions. Go up a little bit.
Yep.
That's going to be highly contested there. There's an audience. If you look at who's
a lot of good stuff.
We have Jonathan Chambers, Jeff Ryman from the Broadband Group. I'm moderating a discussion between Gary Bolton from Fiber Broadband Association and Matt Larson, who's an original board member of WISPA. That should be very lively. And then, of course, we've got Marconi Society coming in with M Labs to talk about broadband mapping.
Oh, fantastic.
Yep. So
will we know? We won't know by Mountain Connect yet how the funds are going to be distributed to states yet, as far as how much money Colorado will get from Bead. Or the maps, they won't be done yet.
I don't think the maps are supposed to be done until. I think if you look at the pace of things normally, or the cadence of the federal government, that's probably not going to get done until this fall.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they can provide exact details in terms of funding until the mapping's done.
Yeah. Well, everybody's wondering. We know every state's getting 100 million, but we also know a lot of states are going to get a lot more than that. So everybody's trying to play that game of how much will my state get above and beyond that 100 million.
Right. So. And then we have we're going to end the day with a really interesting panel talking about digital inclusion and some innovative applications. So. This is going to be a really good panel. So you want to look at the speakers real quick.
Yeah.
If you look at, go ahead. I think that's just there we go.
There we go.
So, we got Donnell Baird from Block Power, Joshua Edmonds from the city of Detroit. And then we got Scott Woods. So he's from the NTIA.
We are really starting to see great focus on not just access, but inclusion and equity. And that's good, because eventually, we hope at least, the problem of access will be solved. It then will be about adoption. It will be about affordability. It will be about technological literacy, that sort of thing. So I do think we're having this discussion.
I know this has started to happen, but I do think we need to think about the fact that underserved and unserved sometimes exist in large cities.
Yes, they do.
So that not everyone will be connected to those folks who are connected as well.
That's right.
Because it has a huge forward-looking economic development impact if they are connected, rather than if they're not.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, how you define connectivity is also a challenge, because as we know, sometimes providers will tell a tale of how well they do when it's not actually that great, and broadband access is sometimes defined by the customer as being less than what the provider says they're doing, just
Right.
because of the way the reporting is done and the way the mapping is done. So great. So a great event, and I can't wait myself personally. I'm looking forward to driving out. I came out last August and I flew, and I decided I spent between airports and rental cars, returns, and everything else. I probably spent almost as much time. So now I'm on a road trip at this time.
No, it's not that bad of a drive, is it?
No, it's about 9 hours, nine and a half hours. If I get tired on the way, I'm gonna leave on Saturday, so I got a flex day there that I can go camping or stay somewhere if I need
I would
to.
still fly. That's a long time in the car.
It is. It is. I'm going to try it. I've not done a road trip that long on my own, so we'll see if I learn to regret it or not. So registration is still open. When does your registration close?
It does not close until you can register right up to the conference start.
Fantastic.
So that doesn't close.
And people want to register. They're just going to basically go to your website like we've been showing here, and you're going to click the big old attend button. I'll bring that up here. And
Yeah, it's register now, I think.
Register now. Yep.
Register, yeah. Top right-hand corner there. You missed it.
Or
Oh,
yep.
Oh, you got
right
it.
up there. And so you have your full conference registration, a single day attendance, and then that Broadband 101 pre-conference is right there. So, take advantage of it. If folks are going to go, certainly I think you want to register for the full conference, or you're going to be missing out on a lot of great content.
Yeah. So some might say, look at that price and say, why you charge us so much? Well, it was $4.99 up until Friday, but
Yeah.
I guess I have to turn in food and beverage requirements. I have to order stuff, blah, blah, blah. So it makes it a little bit difficult to sort of guess either way. And historically, we've had a ton of people sign up in like the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. As someone who's organized events, I feel your pain there. It's people want to wait to the last minute, but you got to order food as if they're going to be there. And so, yeah, providing that, it provides an incentive for people to make their plans early so that you can make your plans early.
Correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Jeff, Mountain Connect, you're now back on a regular track, right? Because you were there spring, May, then COVID came in. You had to, we had to cancel 1 year and postpone another year, correct?
No. I did a virtual event in 2020, which I'll never do again.
That's right.
And last year was in August, in that window where everything kind of opened up.
Yep.
Before it closed down again. So we didn't have any restrictions, and I don't anticipate having those this year either. So
having too close to back, not back to back, but August to May, that you haven't seen that's affected registration. People are still excited to come back.
No, in fact, I will say that people are more excited this year than they were last. And we had a really good turnout last year. So
it was
500 some odd people there. So
great. Well, again, we'll remind everybody, this is the website to go to learn all about Mountain Connect, get registered. The lodging information is on there. It's a great place to stay. They've got a variety of different choices for lodging, from a 2-bedroom condo type thing all the way down to a standard hotel room. And it's all right around the lake there. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful setting. Great place to go for a walk in between sessions or in the early morning before you head to the session. So head to mountainconnect.org, get hooked up, get signed up. Hey, look for me. I'll be there representing C-Band and talking to lots of people. So we hope to see you there. And Jeff, I hope it goes off so smoothly that you just want to do it again next year.
Well, I don't think I have a choice there.
I know you don't. You've created a monster here. You're going to have to keep feeding that monster every year. Yeah. So great. Well, it's been our pleasure to talk with Jeff Gavlinski. He is with Mountain Connect, and that event coming up here at the end of May. Jeff, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Curtis. I really appreciate it.
You bet. I'm really looking forward to the drive out to Mountain Connect to see all the great broadband advocates and also to enjoy the mountain views here in a couple of weeks. Again, thanks to Jeff for participating in our interview this month. Before we move on from this edition of C-Band's Lunch and Learn, we want to give a shout out to some of our newest members of C-Band. We're now up to around 120 members nationwide. I'd like to recognize our newest provider member, Liberty Communications. They're based in West Liberty, Iowa. This is a family-owned business that has been in operation for well over 100 years, starting out, of course, with telephone and later growing into broadband. They've been offering fiber service for the past 10 years or so, gigabit service since 2015, very progressive family-owned business in eastern Iowa, and a great emphasis on serving the communities that they are in. So thank you very much to Liberty Communications for joining. We have a new advocate member, Cinch. This is a company formerly known as Intelliquent, and Cinch is a provider of cloud-based voice services for providers, kind of a white label solution for broadband providers that want to offer a voice service but don't want to have to buy their own telephone switch and all the details and expense that go into that. So Cinch is a new associate member. Thank you for coming on board and supporting the C-Band mission. And also a big thank you to the Iowa Association of Municipal Utilities, our newest associate, I should say, advocate member. And IAMU, of course, does a great job representing the municipal broadband utilities in the state of Iowa. I've got a long affiliation, so does Todd, with IAMU. And so we really want to thank IAMU for coming on board as an advocate member organization for C-Band. That's it for this month's edition of Lunch and Learn. We'll see you next month here on the C-Band Lunch and Learn webcast.